let me set the scene here because this is an amazing day. So Yalapa, you go down for the day, eat pie, go home.
This sounds perfect.
I mean, the perfect vacation.
Let's recreate it right now. We're gonna mix this filling together. It is so incredibly easy. We're gonna do it right in a blender.
So that does look perfect.
Looks like a giant macaroon cookie.
It's actually really tender, but it's strong.
It is strong.
It's like chocolate pudding pie.
Doesn't that look gorgeous?
Yeah. Man, is that good. When I was first told about the pies of Yalapa, this is a small town, it's on the Pacific coast of Mexico, just south of Puerto Vallarta, I fell in love with the concept of standing in the water and eating pie out of hand. So I went there, I met the baker, Augustina Garcia Lorenzo, and her son, Gustavo Lorenzo Garcia, who actually sells the pies by the slice to tourists on the beach. I was even more taken by their stories as well as their pies. So this week, we traveled to this really magical town, Yalapa, to taste Augustina's sweet corn pie, her chocolate pie, and finish with her coconut macaroon pie. All three recipes that you can make at home. Please stay tuned.
Funding for this series was provided by the following.
That meal. You sautéed, you seared, and you served. Cooking with All-Clad. Bonded cookware designed, engineered, and assembled in the USA for over 50 years. All-Clad. For all your kitchen adventures.
Today on Mill Street, we're going to search for the pies of Yalapa. First of all, we have to get to Yalapa, which is down the coast from Puerto Vallarta. You can't get here by car, at least most of the year. You have to drive south and grab a small boat into town. When you first come into this little harbor, you see some fishing boats, but you see a lot of tourists. But this morning, we walked about half an hour to Yalapa, and it's a very different world. There's a wonderful elementary school and a kindergarten being built. There's a river that runs through it. It's a town that's famous for many things, but especially for its pies. Coconut pies, corn pies, chocolate pies. Its pies have been made here for over 40 years by Augustina, and Gustavo, her son, who came back to town, now sells the pies on the beach, slice by slice. One more. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you very much. My mom, they're very famous. I explained to the people, so you know what? This is the same pie for my mama for almost 44 years. Sorry, lady, you have only one piece of pie. Original pie lady. This is good pies, and it's never difficult to sell this pie because my mama is the original pie lady. Thank you. Thank you.
Ya empezó a venir turismo a la playa y yo un día dije, pues yo voy a ir a ver si vendo más allá. Mi horario era de levantarme, era a las 6 de la mañana, para terminar de hacerlos a las 9 y ya me iba a las 11:30 a la playa a venderlos, como lo hace mi hijo ahorita. Cuando nosotros empezamos, nada más hacíamos de coco, de queso, chocolate. Y ya de ahí ya inventamos sabores, plátano, manzana, de nuez.
This is corn pie, believe it or not. This is, I think, gonna be my favorite. It's custardy, it's creamy, it's smooth. The crust is really flaky. Slightly warm. You know, the beach pies and great cooks. What more can I want? So Yalapa, which is on the Pacific coast of Mexico, south of Puerto Vallarta, about 45 minutes by boat, it's really magical. It's hard to describe. Is it the light? Is it the people? It's just this amazing little place. But Gustavo Lorenzo Garcia, I was so taken by this guy because he used to work in Puerto Vallarta. He came back after a couple of years to sell his mother's pies. And so I followed him down the beach, and what he would say is, my name is Gustavo Lorenzo Garcia, the son of Agustina Garcia Lorenzo, and I'm proud to be selling her pies. And he meant it. You don't see that very often, you know? So I'm in love with that place. I'm in love with Gustavo and Agustina and these pies. And the three that I really liked was the corn pie is amazing. The coconut pie is also amazing, and a chocolate pie. But, you know, they're designed for eating out of hand, right?
Yeah, and in order to be able to do that, you need a really sturdy crust. So what we're going to be making right now, it's called a hot water crust. And it's one of the simplest pie crusts I've ever made. You're going to add a 1/4 cup of water into that pot right there. And then,
I always feel like I'm one of your kids when this is like,
yeah, I feel like that too, Chris.
I'll say,
And that's a 1/4 cup of shortening, and then 4 tablespoons, which is also a 1/4 cup of salted butter.
okay.
And then you're just going to heat that on medium-high heat, and you want to bring it to a simmer, and you're going to stir it periodically because you want the fat in there to melt at the same time the water comes to a simmer. And you don't want to just let it simmer away because then your water is going to evaporate and then your ratios will be off. So while we're waiting for that to go ahead and melt, over here we have a 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. I'm just going to add to that a 1/4 teaspoon of table salt. I'm just going to whisk that together.
So could you just describe what kind of pie dough this is versus the typical cut the butter into the flour dough?
Yeah, it's still flaky and, you know, and sandy, but it's a little bit sturdier, which makes it really perfect for these custard-based fillings that we're going to be making. So I'm just going to make a little well in the flour. Okay, Chris, that looks great. And we can go ahead and add that to our flour mixture and pour it right in the center. Great. And then I'm just going to stir this together.
Well, that beats cutting in cold butter in terms of technique.
To the exact perfect, you know, amount, and then, yeah, adding ice cold water. So I'm just going to keep on stirring until you don't see any dry flour bits anymore. And it kind of is going to look like mashed potatoes. And that is pretty much it.
So I have to say, it doesn't look at this point promising. I mean,
You need to have faith.
yeah.
This is going to actually bake up into a nice and flaky pie crust.
All these years we've been making together, I trust you.
Do you trust me?
Now-
Finally.
now finally.
Oh, wait, 20 years later, my work here is done. Okay, so now we're ready to roll out the crust. Going to take a large piece of plastic wrap. Just lay this down.
Now you need plastic wrap because it's so sticky.
It is really sticky. And this way we don't have to use any additional flour to roll it out. I'm just going to pat it into a disc. It just kind of helps me get a nice round shape, about 6 inches. All right. We're going to put another piece of plastic wrap right on top. Great. And then we're just going to roll this out into a 12-inch circle. And it's really soft. You want to be pretty gentle when you're rolling it, or else it'll smush right down. It's so nice about this plastic. You can just, you know, pick it up and move it around if you want to. And I kind of work from the center and gently push out.
Yeah, a lot of people, when they start doing pie dough, they keep rolling over the center, which
Yes.
overworks the center.
Right, and you end up with like really thin edges and a fat center. And I would say this is about a 1/4 inch thick. And then we're just going to peel off that top layer of plastic wrap. Now we're just going to pick it up. I like to pick it up by 2 corners. And then you're just going to gently lay it into the pie plate. I still have the plastic wrap on top of it, and I'm just going to use my fingers to gently ease it into the corners. This is very forgiving, so you don't need to totally like stress if it falls apart a little bit. And when that's done, just peel this off. And then these pieces, I'm just going to patch these back together. I'm going to use up all those bits. I don't want to waste any. Okay, and then I'm just going to go around and just pinch the sides. See, it's looking better already, Chris. Yeah, it's really interesting. It's sticky, but it's also greasy, so it's not really sticking to my fingers. Okay,
Great.
great. And then when that's done, we are going to line it with some foil. And again, because this is so soft, you do want to be sort of careful. I try to get it right in the center. I push down in the center, and then I gently work the foil out to the edges so that you don't...
Crush the
Yeah,
edges.
that beautiful thing that I just worked on. kind of lift it up, ease it down into the edges, because that's where you really want to make sure the dough doesn't slide down. And then once it's in, then I put it back over the edges. Keeps them from over browning. And then we're gonna fill this with quite a lot of pie weights. We're gonna do at least 2 cups. And if you don't have these really great ceramic weights, you can use rice, you can use dried beans. This really helps to keep the sides from sliding down because it is such a kind of a slippery dough.
Yeah, a couple years ago, I started using so many pie weights to actually come up all the way.
Yeah.
And that also is actually not a bad tip.
It's not, no, it's great. Sometimes it really does help. So this is gonna go into a 375-degree oven. We're gonna bake it for 20 minutes. I'm gonna take out the weights, and then I'm gonna gently just poke the bottom with a fork, and that just prevents any bubbles from forming while we finish baking it for about another 12 to 15 minutes, just until it's like.
So I have a question. So
Yes.
20 minutes, because everyone's oven's different. How do you know that 20 minutes is
What I
like-
go by is I kind of, it doesn't really start to brown very much at that point, but it will look sort of matte. It won't look like raw dough
but if
anymore.
it's soft, you need to keep the foil on for another couple minutes.
Yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
okay.
Yep. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this in the oven, and then we're gonna get started on our corn filling.
So let me set the scene here, because this is an amazing day. So there's this little cove, Yalapa, and their house is right above the rocks. And they had all their pies laid out, and I had to eat.
You had to
I
eat
had to
all
eat
of them.
all of them. But the corn pie was clearly my favorite. It had I think the best texture, and the corn flavor was interesting, but it wasn't overpowering. It was really good. You know, what a great day. You go down for the day, eat pie, go home.
That sounds perfect.
I mean, the perfect vacation.
Let's recreate it right now.
So this is the corn pie.
Yeah, and here we have our beautiful baked crust, as you can see. Turned out pretty nice, right?
Looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna mix this filling together. It is so incredibly easy. We're gonna do it right in a blender. So we're gonna go ahead and start. Here I have 2.5 cups of fresh corn. You're gonna need about 3 ears of corn to get this. Fresh is really much, much better, and I'm sure that's what they used in Mexico. If you can't get fresh, you can also use frozen. You just wanna thaw it first and then pat it dry to get rid of some of that extra moisture. Okay, into the corn, I'm gonna add a cup of milk. This is whole milk. I'm gonna add 1/2 cup of white sugar. I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of cornstarch. This is gonna help set the pie up so it'll be thick enough for us to pick up.
You know, I love blenders because in Mexican cooking, even in baking, so many things start in the blender, which is really easy.
It is easy, yeah, it's great. It's a great tool. And then I'm gonna add last 4 eggs. Okay, that's it. I'm gonna go ahead and blend this until everything's really well combined. It's gonna take about 1 minute. Okay, this looks great. Now I'm gonna pour this over this strainer, and I'm gonna have you press really, really hard to get all of the liquid out as much as possible. With that spatula, yeah, just go ahead and press really hard. Thank you for doing all of the hard work for me.
What Eric is thinking but not saying out loud is, you got to keep going. This isn't enough yet, right? I know, I can just tell. You get that intense,
Yeah.
quiet.
Yep.
Okay, I think we're
There
good.
you go. And now we're just gonna add the last few ingredients. I've got a 1/4 teaspoon table salt here and a teaspoon each of lemon juice. Just adds some nice brightness, and vanilla extract. Just gonna stir that in.
Now, if you didn't have a sturdy crust, this is very liquid,
Yes.
and it would sog out.
Yeah,
That's a
or
professional
seep
term.
through. Yeah, it would be a big mess, but this crust looks great. I'm just gonna pour this in. Thank you.
So you needed that height on the side.
Yeah, I think you're right, yeah. So this is it, and now this is gonna go into a 325-degree oven, and it's gonna bake for about 55 to 60 minutes. And what you wanna look for is that it's just gonna jiggle a little bit, and that's when you know that it's set and it's ready to go.
Just in the center jiggle or the whole pie?
The whole pie, because we have the cornstarch in there, and that helps set it all up. So I'm gonna carefully take this to the oven.
I was gonna say, you better tread softly
I know,
right
right?
now. So that does look perfect.
Doesn't that look gorgeous? And I love the color. So this had baked for almost an hour, and then let it cool to room temperature, and then I actually chilled it for at least 2 hours in the refrigerator, so it's nice and set. You ready to try it?
Yeah.
You can already see, though, how nicely set up this filling is. I mean, look at that. It's set up beautifully. It's nice and creamy, but it's still sturdy enough. And the crust is actually quite tender.
Yeah, that's the thing, I thought the crust was gonna be tough because the way the butter and shortening went into it. It's actually really tender, but it's strong.
It is strong.
Man, is that good.
So Chris, I'm gonna make those other two pies that you mentioned. I'm gonna go make the chocolate pie and I'm gonna make the coconut pie. Because clearly you need some more pie.
I clearly need more pie. I mean, and the coconut's unusual because it's almost like a coconut macaroon. It's a little thicker. It's very different.
Yeah, it's very different than like a coconut cream pie.
And
it's excellent.
everybody loves chocolate pie.
Yes.
So I'll be back when you're done.
Okay, great.
Because I want two
I'll
more
see you
pieces
then.
of pie.
Okay, so as promised, I'm now gonna show you how to make the Yalapa-style chocolate pie. This is a super easy pie to put together. I'm gonna go ahead and get started. Here I have a 1.5 cups of white sugar. I'm gonna add to this 1/2 cup of Dutch processed cocoa powder. You can use natural cocoa powder, but we really, really like the deep, dark color that the Dutch processed cocoa adds. And then to that, I'm gonna add 3 tablespoons of cornstarch. Make sure I get it all. And we're also gonna add 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. And the reason we're adding both of these starches is because it's really important for this pie to set up nice and thick. Because remember, we're supposed to be able to pick up these pieces of pie and eat them out of hand. And then last, we're gonna add 3/4 teaspoon of table salt. And I'm gonna go ahead and whisk this together just to make sure we break up any lumps of either the cocoa powder or the cornstarch. Okay, and now we're gonna add 8 egg yolks. So remember, this is a custard pie. And then 2.5 cups of whole milk. Go ahead and whisk this together. Sort of poke down on the yolks to break them up a little bit. Okay, and so once that's all incorporated, I'm gonna transfer this over to my pot that I have on the stove. And this is a twice cooked filling. So we're gonna get it started on the stovetop and then it's gonna bake again in the oven because we want it to be really set. And I'm gonna cook this over medium heat. You wanna make sure that you're whisking this constantly. You don't want any parts of it to overcook, and you wanna make sure you get the whisk all the way deep into the corners of the pot. You can tell it's getting close when it starts to steam a little bit, and you can feel the mixture thickening. You want it to thicken to about the texture of like sour cream or like a Greek-style yogurt. All right, it's just starting to bubble along the edges, and it's definitely getting thicker, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the heat. Now I wanna quickly strain this mixture, and you don't wanna wait because it's gonna thicken and set up. And we're gonna strain it. So I'm just pressing down to get it through the strainer. You wanna make sure we don't have any lumps from the flour or the cornstarch or any like little cooked eggy bits. We want the texture to be velvety smooth. And then I just wanna make sure that I scrape off the part of the filling that's stuck on the bottom of the strainer. So we don't wanna lose that bit. Okay, great. And last, I'm just gonna add 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. Just gonna stir that in. Oh my gosh, this smells so good already. Okay, and that's it. Now it's ready to go into our crust. Again, this is the same hot water crust that we are using for all the pies. It's nice and sturdy. Just gonna scrape that into the center. Okay, now I'm just gonna spread this into an even layer. Now, if your filling is a little bit thinner than this, you won't have to use a spatula. You can just tilt the pie. It'll even out into a nice smooth layer. Okay, that looks great. So now I'm ready to go ahead and put this in the oven. I'm gonna bake it at 350 degrees for 30 to 35 minutes until it's set. Okay, so while our chocolate pie is in the oven baking, I'm gonna go ahead and get started on our coconut macaroon pie, which is one of my favorites. For this pie, I wanna make sure that you use unsweetened coconut or else it'll be far too sweet. We really like this nice finely desiccated unsweetened coconut. If you could only find the kind that has larger shreds, just make sure you break those down a little bit. Either you could do that in the blender, you could do it in a food processor, or else the whole thing's gonna be too stringy and mealy. Okay, so we're gonna start by blending a portion of the unsweetened coconut. And the reason we're doing this just gives the pie a much smoother texture. So this is a 1.5 cups of coconut. I'm gonna add to that 1 cup of white sugar. a tablespoon of cornstarch. So again, we want to make sure we add our thickening agent. I'm going to add 3/4 of a teaspoon of table salt. We have a teaspoon of vanilla and a tablespoon of lime juice, which just helps brighten up the filling. And then last, I'm going to add, this is 1 14-ounce can of regular coconut milk. You want to make sure that you don't buy the light coconut milk. You also definitely don't want to get the cream of coconut. That's a totally different product. That'll be way too sweet and cloying. Okay, so now we're going to blend this really well for like 1 to 2 minutes. You may have to stop halfway through and just scrape down the sides of the blender. Make sure you get any dry pockets of coconut, which I do have. Okay, so that's been about 2 minutes. This looks great. Now I'm just going to add 4 whole eggs. And we're just going to blend this till they're incorporated. It's about 10 seconds. Okay, and that's it. I'm going to go ahead and pour this in our mixing bowl. And scrape out the blender. I want to get all the good bits. Okay, now we're going to add the rest of the coconut. This is another cup of coconut. Because again, this is a coconut macaroon pie. I'm just going to mix this together. Once that's all mixed, we're just going to transfer this again to our hot water pie crust. Just made it. Okay, so this is ready to go in the oven. We're gonna bake this at 350 degrees. It's gonna bake for 55 to 60 minutes. You wanna look for it to start browning on the edges, and it's gonna be nice and domed in the center. And as soon as our pie is done baking, Chris is gonna come back and we're gonna get to taste both of them.
You've been busy,
I know,
evidently.
right? These look great. I'm super excited to try these. Look at this, looks like a giant macaroon cookie.
In a crust.
And a crust, and the chocolate one, I mean, you can't get past that color. It just looks absolutely divine. You ready to try them?
Yeah.
Okay, great. If you wouldn't mind, I'm gonna have you go ahead and slice up the coconut pie, and I will work on the chocolate pie.
That means this is the hard one, right? I know you.
I would never. Crust is so sturdy. Goodness, all right. Oh, that looks amazing. All right, look at this chocolate. Would you like some whipped cream with your chocolate?
I would.
Go.
Thank you so much. This one's perfect.
All right.
Oh.
I'm gonna go coconut first.
It's like chocolate pudding pie.
It's rich, but it's not overwhelming. This has like really nice deep chocolate flavor, but the texture is light. So good.
Those are really good. And the crust is crisp, strong, but it's also tender at the same time.
Yep. It's perfect for these pies.
So 3 great pies from Yalapa. Corn pie, which is unusual, but actually is terrific. A really tender, chocolatey, but not overly chocolatey chocolate pie. And a coconut pie that is very much like a coconut macaroon, except very light as well.
Yeah.
And a crust that's really easy to make and is tough enough to stand up, but is also tender. So if you'd like to get these recipes, all the recipes from this season of Milk Street Television, go to milkstreettv.com.
All episodes and recipes from this season of Milk Street Television are available for free at our website, milkstreettv.com. Please access our content, including our step-by-step recipe videos, from your smartphone, your tablet, or your computer.
The new Milk Street Cookbook is now available and includes every recipe from our TV show. From fried shrimp tacos and Thai-style vegetable stir-fry to Mexican chicken soup and Swedish cardamom buns, the Milk Street Cookbook offers bolder, fresher, simpler recipes. Order your copy of the Milk Street Cookbook for $27, 40% less than the cover price, and receive a Milk Street tote with your order at no additional charge. Call 855-MILK-177 or order online.
Funding for this series was provided by the following.
That meal. You sautéed, you seared, and you served. Cooking with All-Clad. Bonded cookware designed, engineered, and assembled in the USA for over 50 years. All-Clad. For all your kitchen adventures.